was just a struggling single dad bringing breakfast to a quiet woman every morning, until one knock shattered his life forever. When uniformed military officers arrived at his door, the truth they revealed would expose secrets buried by war, sacrifice, and love, and change everything he believed about fate. If you love emotional, twist-filled stories that stay with you long after the final word, hit subscribe now and never miss a story that grips your heart and refuses to let go. No one in the small coastal town noticed Ethan Cole at first, and that was exactly how he liked it, because after losing his wife in a freeway accident 3 years earlier, invisibility felt safer than sympathy, and every morning at exactly 6:30, before the sun burned through the mist and before his 7-year-old daughter Lily woke up, Ethan packed 2 paper bags with toast, eggs, fruit, and sometimes a homemade muffin if his paycheck from the Marina Cafe had stretched far enough that week, then walked 3 blocks to the same quiet house at the end of Harbor Street, where a woman named Grace lived alone, curtains always half-drawn, lights rarely on, and he would leave the breakfast on her porch, knock twice, and walk away without waiting, because Grace never opened the door while he was there, never spoke more than a few careful words when they did meet, and yet somehow, over months that bled into a year, this simple ritual became the most constant thing in Ethan's fragile life, a rhythm that grounded him when everything else felt like it might collapse, because Grace had once helped Lily when she'd fallen off her bike and scraped her knee. And later Ethan learned she was struggling, thin, tired, eyes haunted in a way he recognized all too well, and one rainy morning he'd brought an extra sandwich, and she'd whispered thank you like it was something dangerous to say out loud, and that was how it began, not with romance or heroics, but with quiet understanding between 2 people carrying invisible wounds, and as the months passed Ethan learned fragments of Grace's life through careful silences, learned she didn't talk about her past, learned she flinched at loud noises, learned she slept badly and watched the street like someone expecting something terrible to return, and still he brought breakfast every day, even when the marina cut his hours, even when Lily needed new shoes, because somehow feeding Grace felt like feeding hope itself, and Lily noticed too, asking why they helped the sad lady, and Ethan told her that sometimes the world hurt people badly and forgot to help them heal, and Lily nodded with the serious wisdom of a child who had buried her mother too young, and Grace, from behind her door, listened to Lily's laughter when she occasionally came along, and for the first time in years felt something warm loosen in her chest, something she had locked away after Afghanistan, after the explosion, after the screams, after the classified orders that changed her name, her records, and her future, because Grace was not just Grace, and Harbor Street was not just a quiet hiding place, but Ethan didn't know that yet, and neither did the town, and so life continued in small, gentle motions until the morning Ethan overslept because Lily had a fever, and when he finally rushed to Grace's house with cold toast and a racing heart, the porch was empty, the door ajar, and for the first time since he'd known her, Grace was gone. Grace returned 3 days later thinner, paler, eyes sharper with a fear Ethan had never seen before, and she thanked him too quickly for the missed breakfasts, pressing the bag to her chest like armor, and Ethan wanted to ask where she'd been, wanted to tell her he'd worried, but something in her face warned him not to, and that night Lily's fever broke and Ethan allowed himself to believe everything would return to normal, but the universe had other plans, because the next morning, just after Ethan kissed Lily goodbye and promised to be back before dinner, there came a knock on his own door, heavy and deliberate, and when he opened it, 2 uniformed military officers stood on his porch, crisp, unreadable, flags stitched to their shoulders, and the taller one asked his name like it was already written in a file, and Ethan felt his stomach drop because ordinary people did not get visits like this, and neighbors peeked through blinds as the officers stepped inside his small living room, eyes scanning, cataloging, and the shorter officer asked how long he had known Grace, and Ethan's mouth went dry as he explained the breakfasts, the kindness, the simple routine, and the officers exchanged a look that told him he had wandered into something far larger than himself, and then they told him the truth in pieces that barely fit together, that Grace was not her real name, that she was a decorated military intelligence officer presumed dead after a classified operation overseas, that she had gone into hiding after refusing orders that would have killed civilians, that her survival had been erased to protect higher command, and that now, after years, someone had discovered she was alive, and Ethan's head spun because the quiet woman with haunted eyes and trembling hands had once commanded teams, saved lives, disobeyed orders for moral reasons, and paid for it with everything she was, and the officers said they weren't there to arrest Ethan, but to warn him, because anyone close to Grace was now a liability, a potential target, and Ethan thought of Lily, sleeping with her stuffed bear, unaware that her world had just become dangerous, and fear roared through him like fire, but beneath it burned something stronger, because Grace had protected others at great cost, and he would not abandon her now, not after she'd trusted him enough to accept his help. And when the officers left, Promising to monitor the situation, Ethan went straight to Grace's house, pounding on the door until she opened it, eyes already knowing, and when he told her what had happened, she closed her eyes like someone finally caught by a storm she'd been outrunning for years, and she confessed everything, from the mission that went wrong to the superior who ordered her silence, to the years spent hiding, waiting for consequences, and Ethan listened without interrupting, because grief had taught him how to sit with pain without trying to fix it. And when she finished, voice breaking, she told him to stay away, to protect his daughter, to forget her completely, and for a long moment Ethan considered it, because fear is persuasive and love is risky, but then he remembered Lily's scraped knee, Grace's quiet gratitude, the way she watched the street like a soldier guarding others even in exile, and he told her no, that he would not disappear, that kindness was not a crime, and that if danger came, they would face it together, and Grace cried then, openly, for the first time since the war, because no one had chosen her when it mattered most, until now. The pressure escalated quickly, unmarked cars lingering too long, strange phone calls that clicked before disconnecting, and Grace prepared contingency plans with the calm precision of someone trained for worst-case scenarios, while Ethan balanced work, parenting, and the growing realization that love had entered his life quietly and fiercely, and Lily sensed it too, calling Grace, Auntie, and bringing her drawings, unknowingly healing wounds no therapy ever could, until the day came when Grace was summoned, not by enemies, but by the truth, because a whistleblower within the military leaked evidence of the illegal orders, the cover-up, and the lives sacrificed, and suddenly Grace was no longer a ghost but a witness, and the same institution that erased her now needed her alive, and once again officers arrived at Ethan's door, but this time their posture was different, respectful, almost reverent, and they explained that Grace would be reinstated, her name cleared, her service honored publicly, and Ethan watched from the crowd weeks later as Grace stood in uniform, medals gleaming, eyes steady, while the truth finally came to light. And when she found him afterward, slipping her hand into his like it belonged there, she told him that the breakfasts had saved her life in ways the military never had, that being seen as human again had given her the strength to survive, and Ethan realized that sometimes the smallest acts echo the loudest, that love doesn't always arrive with fireworks, but with paper bags and quiet persistence, and the town that once overlooked him now told the story of the single dad whose kindness uncovered a hero, and Lily grew up knowing that doing the right thing mattered even when it was scary, and Grace built a future no longer defined by hiding, and years later, when people asked Ethan how he'd changed history, he always smiled sadly and said he'd only brought breakfast, because he believed no one should face the world hungry or alone, and if this story moved you, reminded you that kindness can change destinies, subscribe now for more unforgettable stories of love, sacrifice, and the quiet courage that shapes our lives.